Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at the Matek F405 OSD flight controller. Matek is mostly known for making PDBs and LEDs, but now they started making some interesting products like VTXs and this flight controller, the Matek F405 OSD. The F405 comes in two versions, the all-in-one and the OSD. The all-in-one version is a F4 flight controller with PDB connections, like pads for the battery and ESCs. The all-in-one version would be great for people who like to build the traditional way with 4 ESCs on each arm. The one I'll be reviewing is the OSD version because I like to build with 4-in-1 ESCs. This board doesn't have the pads for the battery or the ESC, but it has Betaflight OSD. The F405 has a 16-pin ribbon connection on the back of it to connect to their FC Hub 6S PDB. If you use that ribbon, if you use that PDB, you can use a ribbon connection that comes with this to connect here and to the PDB, and it'll connect the ESCs to the signals. But I won't be using that in this build because I'll be building with a 4-in-1 ESC. So let's take a look at the highlights of the F405 OSD. It uses the STM32 F405 processor, which is the same one used in the Betaflight F4 flight controller, which I'll be taking a look at later, and we'll do a comparison. It has Betaflight OSD. It's got a micro SD black box recorder. It's got 5 UARTs, it's got 6 PWM D-shot outputs. Signals 5 and 6 over here can be configured for FrSky telemetry, like if you're using the LUA script, or it can be remapped to a dead channel. So like if you burn one of the signal pads while you're soldering, you can remap one of these to replace this, or on the back it has ground and S1 through 4 you can use if you kill one of your channels. It's got a programmable RGB LED output over here. It's got buzzer output, and it's got a BEC with a 3 amp max. So let's just go over the board quickly over here. Good thing about this board, what I really like, is that it's got the signals at each corner of the board laid out in the Betaflight motor signal configuration. You got S1, S2, 3, and 4 over here. And then down here you have the 5 volts for the LED, 5 volt, and then buzzer. You got UART 4, UART 3, and then you got UART 2, which is dedicated for the FrSky because it's got a built-in inverter, so you can connect your S-Bus receiver directly to this board. On the bottom you got the S-Bus, you got 4 to 5 volt output here, and then ground. And if you're using Spectrum, you use the top row, which got ground, got 3.3 volt output, and then your RX signal goes here. On the side you got RSSI, you got current, you got VCC. The VCC is for if you want to monitor the voltage of your battery. The one thing I don't like about this board is that it does require a 5 volt to power the board over here on the side. Unlike the other boards where you can connect the battery directly to the flight controller to power it, this one you need a 5 volt to power. And then if you want to monitor the voltage, you have to connect a separate VCC. This goes directly to your battery. And then you have a ground here. You got another 3.3 volt out here, a 5 volt out, ground, and then you got a UART1 here. So on the build, I'm not going to go too deep into the build of this quad here, because I'll go deeper into it, because most likely I'll be using this board for the Floss 2 build video that I got coming up. On this one I got a Tokyo X here, and I'm basically salvaging parts from another frame that I won't be using. I got the T-Motor F40 Pro 2400 kV, and I'll be using the SpeedX 30 amp ESC. This ESC is perfect for building with the Matek because it has a built-in BEC for a 5 volt out. and VCC wire. So you can see on this harness here, you got the wires on the left, which is ground and a 5-volt out, and then you got your signals 1 through 4, these white wires in the middle, and then this wire on the right is a VCC, which is basically the battery. This board is perfect for the Matek because you can power the board with using these wires here for the 5-volt, and then you can connect the VCC over here so you can monitor the voltage. As you can see, I've already got the wires cut and tin for this board because I've already built this actually, and I just took it apart for the video. So for this build, I'll be using the new FrSky XSR-M. It's basically the same thing as the XSR, the regular XSR, but it's just in a smaller footprint, and it's got mounting holes, the 20 by 20 mounting holes for micro builds. It's got all the same features as the bigger XSR, just in a smaller footprint. It's got the regular power or ground power signal, S-bus signal wires, and then it's got this blue wire, which is their smart port wire. So I'll just connect it to my, I'm going to take off this just to make it easier to see. Alright, so you can tell I've already got this wire harness cut for this build. So I'm just going to go ahead and solder it up. So on the back, on the bottom of the board here, you got your ground, power, signal, and then I'm going to connect the smart port wire to S5, and then later in Betaflight we'll configure S5 to receive a serial so you can do the telemetry and LUA script. Alright, so we got ground, power, which is the red wire, and then the S-bus will go on the S-bus connection, and then I got my smart port wire will go to S5 over here. Alright, so I'm just gonna put the receiver under the flight controller, and then just make sure when you put this, make sure this bind button is not touching the SD card reader. So it's gonna go something like this, and then I'll just move the wires that I need to go on the other side over. Or actually, first I'm gonna install the harness for the VTX. So in this build, I'm just gonna use a basic old VTX here just to do the review for this board, because in the part 2 of this build I'm gonna do a review on the Matek VTX-HV, which is a VTX that has a UFL connector that's kind of stacks on top of the flight controller. You can see it's got mounting holes that mounts on a standard 30 by 30 receiver. So for this build, I'm not going to use this yet. I'll just use a basic VTX, and then we'll do the other VTX in part 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and solder this one onto a powder lead. Alright, so my VTX power will go on this side. I'll move these wires, and this is the 2 wires here are my 5-volt. I'll move it over here, and then these are my signals 1 and 3, and this is VCC. So I'll just kind of move these wires to where I want them to go, and then I'll put the flight controller on. I'll be mounting it with the arrow pointing forward, which is the normal way. Alright, so I went ahead and mounted the board onto the frame. Normally, the way you're supposed to mount this board is using these little rubber bobbins that came with it to help dampen the vibrations. But since I'm flying, I'll be using this Tokyo X. It's got the built-in the dampeners into the frame already, so you won't be needing these little rubber bobbins. So if you run into any vibration issues, just go ahead and use these. Alright, so first we'll just connect the 5-volt onto the board. .5V, and then we'll connect the VCC so we can monitor the battery voltage in our OSD. And then I've already got the signal wires marked for signals 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 1 is going to go here. 2. 1, 2. Goes out 3. And then 2 goes here. And 4. So as you can see, this setup on the board is super easy. You basically just connect the signals to your ESC and then connect your RX, 5-volt, VCC, and then next we'll just connect the wires for the OSD camera and VTX. So I'm going to go ahead and pre-tin my pads. So I'm going to use the camera input. I'll be using the power, the 5-volt out from the board to power my camera, and then I'll be using the signal out, which is the VTX. So I've already got my VTX wire powered up from the VCC pad on the OSD, and then I'm just going to connect the video out signal to the output. And then I'll be using this Foxeer V3. I've already got the wire harness measured out. I'm just going to take this off to make it easier to solder. So we got camera, 5-volt, and we got ground. Alright, so the reason why you connect the video in and video out onto the board is for the OSD, because normally if you're using a a regular VTX like this, these usually have a 5-volt out, so you can power your camera. But in order for the Betaflight OSD to work, you have to have the input of your camera going into the board, so the board can overlay the OSD info and then output it onto the VTX. So this is pretty much done with the build. So I'm just going to put it back together, and then I'll meet up with Ivan NV Astro, and then he'll do the flight footage for me. So I'm just going to finish putting it together with the camera, and then we'll go fly.
What's going on, guys? Team Pilot here, NV Astro. This here is my first flight with the new F405 FC that Mike has been talking to you guys about. Okay, so let's jump right into it. And by the way, I am using the 5042 Wind Dancers. These are by GymFan. These are very nice props. If you guys are looking for a nice responsive low end from a prop that will be able to also handle like a GoPro like we have now. We will be having these in the store within the next week or so. So stay on the lookout for those if you guys are interested in these props. Let's actually start pushing it a little bit and seeing what this thing is capable of. Because I currently run an F3 board, which is not capable of doing what an F4 is doing. So let's push it around these turns here. Oh, very nice. Feels very locked in. One huge difference I could tell already. Oh. We're good. This is a Tokyo. Tokyo, guys. So if you guys haven't picked up a Tokyo, go pick one up already. Because if you didn't see that, it just survived them crashes. But like I was saying, one huge difference I could tell right away is that this board feels very nice, in the sense that it doesn't have as much prop watch as my F3, and like I said before, it has the exact same tune as my F3 boards do, and I'm currently running a Lux V2. So let's actually attempt this again. We actually made it that time. So yes, that's one main difference I noticed from this right now. Very locked in around these corners. I stayed on throttle around there. No prop wash, no no oscillations. Very, very smooth. And I think a big part with that, not only is it the flight controller, but it's the prop that we're using. The 5042s do a very good job around these nice corners that I'm busting out here. One thing I really like about this flight controller, it tells me my voltage, but as you can see, I'm bringing it down at 11 volts because I'm actually too into my flying, but that's a nice little feature from this flight controller. But
alright, so we just got done flying, and the reason why I didn't show the setup of the flight controller in Betaflight is because I wanted to get the PIDs tuned for this flight controller before I started posting the screens. So in this video, I'm not going to show the setup. If you want the PIDs and all the ports and all the rest of the setups, you can head to my website and I'll have instructions on how to set up the board along with the PIDs and how to set up the telemetry of this board. So let's just talk about how this board flies. Comparing it to my other Tokyo, where I have basically the exact setup, except instead of using this flight controller, I'm using the Lumineer Lux V2. Ivan is pretty much flying the same setup also. Same motors, same camera, same ESC. The only difference is we're flying the Lux 2. So comparing this board with the Lux 2 is that when you're actually flying a well-tuned quad, it really doesn't, you really don't feel a big difference, except some of the flight characteristics of this board is smoother. For instance, when you do like a real hard 180 turn, this board has a lot less prop wash than the Lux 2. So I don't know if it has something to do with this using a much faster processor or what, but overall the board flies very well. So we'll just do a quick comparison of this Matek F405 versus a similar board, which is the Betaflight F4, which I do not have yet. So we'll just compare the specs of the Betaflight F4 and the Betaflight F3, which is the older board, which I have used. The Betaflight F4 board is pretty much laid out the same as the F3, except, you know, some small things have changed, like the processor. One thing I really don't like about the Betaflight F3 and F4 boards is that it's an all-in-one board, but you can see the power pads for the ESC signals are on the back of the board, and then the signals are on the top. So if you're building with the traditional way with one ESC on each arm, I think that would be pretty hard to build. But I always build with 4-in-1, so it wasn't a problem for me. But for people who build a traditional way, I can see how that can be a problem. So let's just compare the specs of the F405 versus the Betaflight F4. They both use the same STM32 F405 processor. They both have OSD, and they both have the micro SD for black box recording. The difference is that the Betaflight F4 board is $45, whereas the Matek F405 is about $30. So there's about 50% difference in the price. And the BEC on the Betaflight F4 is a 1.5 amp, whereas the Matek is a 3 amp. And also the Betaflight F4 has a built-in PDB and a current sensor. But then, yeah, the PDB functions on the Betaflight F4 is kind of weird because the pads are on both sides of the board. Alright, so after building the Matek F405 OSD, I'd say this board is a winner. I mean, it's easy to build. It flies great. It's durable. I mean, you saw Ivan fly up in a tree. It fell out of a tree, and it still kept flying. I bashed it into a bunch of trees, branches, everything. Today, everything was fine. Flight controller is fine. Motors are fine. Camera is fine. So at a price point of about $30 for an F4 board, I'd say it's a winner. Considering most boards, most flight controllers these days are around the $40–45 range. This board is only $30. So give it a shot, and let me know what you think in the comments below. So thanks for watching, and I hope this video was helpful, and please don't forget to subscribe.